Ah, there we go. Rosalind, great dog. I feel like everyone should have brought the animals, would have made it more interesting. So just as we slowly let people congregate back, this is really a first in terms of running these virtual events. Majority of it's been done every 3 to 4 weeks just to give opportunity for people to connect. And it's just you can find in business, it can be a bit of a lonely endeavor. And a lot of the things that have led to breakthroughs in what I do has been because of the people I know, and they have a different mental mind map that leads to thinking in a way that I might not have. For example, just with COVID, I'm a bit optimistic and I didn't expect it to be something, but we had a lady in our office that really led the way and made sure that we're in a good position and nothing really affected us. So that's what this whole initiative is about. It's a bit rough around the edges because it's the first time running a virtual one. There is another one going to be on the 22nd of September. And ideally they'll be in person, but another time we might have to do it virtual again. But as I say, the idea is I just found as a financial planner, there are a lot of people in business that don't have a clear exit strategy and they get a bit too tied up. And the problem is what happens when you want to exit that business. A lot of people in the service industry, they may not have that opportunity because they're the product. So I thought if I create value for business owners and build a network, either people will refer business and they want people that need help and send them my way, or alternatively, I just build a network and share ideas and build a community where we actually collectively grow together. So I actually feel very fortunate to have the next speaker, Grant. He's come to a couple of events and he's also he's a human resources director and he's been in human resources for over 10 years. And he's really motivated around the organizational part and helping improve the culture. And it's really, really around helping re-engage your staff, not remotely specifically, but just how to get that passion from a self-development standpoint and leading from the inside out, and then also driving them to be re-engaged in what they do. So if you can help people enjoy what they do, you'll become a wealthy man if they work alongside you, because it's a rare thing. So without further ado, we'll kick it off with Grant.
Thank you, Ryan. And just to essentially reframe the discussion point, I am aware that many people on this call will be business owners. And ultimately, as what Ryan suggested there, whenever we talk about engagement, that always starts with us and it always starts with our level of contentment in terms of the work that we're doing. So a large area of my focus tonight will really be focused on self and really making sure that we reflect first in terms of our own engagement levels before we then look to assist others. So the reason why I wanted to talk tonight, and as Ryan referenced up front, it's an area that I'm incredibly passionate about when we talk about engagement and culture, is I'm sure you will have heard this statistic before, that 70% of the world's workforces are disengaged. And essentially that's a number that's been increasing vastly across the years. And indicators suggest that whilst we did have some correction in terms of those numbers with the COVID-19 response, ultimately we can see that those numbers are starting to creep up again. What does 70% of people being disengaged mean? Well, it essentially means that they dread going to work. And whether you're a business owner or whether you're a part of a workforce or you're looking after a workforce, that really means that 7 out of 10 people think that their work kind of sucks. What that means, feeling overworked sometimes, feeling underpaid, eye rolling at the boss. And if you feel like you can relate to some of that right now, then don't feel too bad, because the statistics would suggest that 7 out of 10 people on this call feel exactly the same way. Now, in terms of the decade that I've worked in human resources, across industry, I've typically seen that challenge has been posed as one for the employer to solve, or for business owners to solve, essentially seeking feedback from employees around how to improve, or tell us your problems, we'll try not to disappoint you. But as I reflect on that, I consider, is it possible that from a broad business point of view, have 70% of businesses got it that wrong? And it's my view that businesses need to, of course, improve, but any improvement really starts at an individual level, because we're all responsible for our own engagement levels. And I like to think of the analogy that any great relationship between an employer and employee should operate like any other relationship, and that is that it's really on the basis of trust and compromise both ways. So if I take you back, when I was a young boy, I loved dinosaurs and I dreamt of being a paleontologist. Now, those dreams didn't unfold. I took the next logical step. I moved into a Bachelor of Management degree. I worked on the front line of a supermarket. I took a second job as a cleaner. I did some further study in mental health and drug and alcohol. I was a caseworker for some time. And I even did a stint in the Army Reserves. And it was actually years after graduating from uni before I landed my first corporate role, and that was in learning and development, so vocational education. I remember at the time I put on my poorly fitted suit and I was ready for utopian Google type environment with everything perfect. But essentially how it played out is I sat in a cold bluestone office building. It was virtually silent all day besides the tap of keyboards and a couple of people gossiping in the corner. I remember thinking regularly that, and I'm sure that we all have these moments that, humans are beautifully imperfect. And a business, what is that? Well, it's a collection of imperfect individuals. And sometimes we can put the expectation on our workplaces that we want them to be perfect too. But actually with that proposition, you can fully expect that things won't always go your way in the workplace. And therefore you need to build some resilience around that. That was certainly my experience. And, as I bounced off the sides, discovering what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, through a whole lot of roles that weren't, as I look back on them, entirely linked. It certainly wasn't glamorous, but each of those did make me better, and I learned a lot from them, and they gave me better perspective. So today as a HR director, and as I say that, you've probably picked up that I am Australian. I was raised in a working class family in regional Victoria, so this bogan accent's not going anywhere. But I'm really honoured to work at a business that I love, to work alongside people that I connect with. And in my time partnering across the supply demand side of the business, having worked in a lot of manufacturing sites, I've seen a lot of shifts in the way that we work and the way that we do business, but really none more drastic than the past 5 months in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And really from a business point of view, what we've seen is ways of working have been turned on their head. Job descriptions cast aside, employees having to creatively find ways to adapt their skills, to deliver, to connect like never before. Symbolic productivity, where typically you could view productivity through desk time and meetings. Well, that was essentially turned around as well. And really, resourcefulness and resilience were highly valued. Even things like artificial props, yoga in the office disappeared. And again, people had to find their way and do that in their own time with authenticity and freedom. And really what we learned is an intersection between employee accountability and employee flexibility. And through this time, we relearned that, of course, we can't control our economy. And we also got many learnings in the sense that we can't completely control our business environment either. But we were also reminded, and Ryan alluded to it at the start, is that we can always control our own behavior and mindset. And that's where my talk will center around tonight, is really 3 lessons, 3 very simple truths that will help galvanize you in the workforce, or even as a business owner, whenever you're dealing with some of those imperfect scenarios that I've referenced. Or at least hopefully keep yourself out of that 70% that dread going to work, noting that that is a global stat. I'm sure it's not completely relevant for New Zealand. It's certainly not relevant for this bunch of here. So lesson number 1 is that purpose starts with responsibility. So there's a whole lot of talk in industry that marrying your business purpose with your personal purpose will enhance engagement and performance. And I believe that to be true. But if you think about it, every business and every individual is so unique and so complex that meshing those two together, business purpose, personal purpose, is a hell of a lot of pressure. That's a pretty difficult ask to do. So therefore, I suggest taking a step back from that and really demystifying purpose. And how I do that is each of us has a set of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So internal motivators, external motivators. And together combined, it's suggested that they'll fulfill us. And really that's what will give us a great true north in terms of what our purpose is. So if we break those down, intrinsic motivators are things such as, who do you want to become? So your learning journey, the experiences that you want, the development that you want to see. Who do you want to become? What do you want to contribute? So what are the gifts that you really want to give to others? And then what's the difference that you want to make in the world? Whatever that is. Intrinsic motivators. Extrinsic motivators are essentially the things outside of yourself. And if we think about a workplace, it's pay, it's job title, it's promotions, it's recognition. Now, I don't know about you, but if I think about some of the worst times in the workplace, and it may be the same in terms of when you're dealing with employees, is dealing with when the extrinsic side or the external motivators aren't going the way that we want them to. Those feelings of being underpaid, feeling like you're not recognized, not validated, not seen, or when a promotion goes to someone that you think is incompetent, that can be the stuff of nightmares. And, if you acted out your thoughts in those times, you might just end up in jail. But they're typically the times that aggravate us the most. So what is the antidote to those situations that we may not want to hear or we may not process in the moment? Well, first of all, is to take a step back off the situation and have a good, healthy dose of gratitude. And remind yourself, whatever the situation is, remind yourself of what is working well. So what is playing out in the workplace, whether that's a friend that you have in the workplace or whether that's just some basics that are happening in front of you, business or workplace, that are actually working well, in order to give yourself a reminder around what you have to be grateful for, what you have to be thankful for. That will then set you up for really the second step. And again, whenever you deal with an imperfect scenario, is to always come back within and think about, what do you need to improve? So for yourself, it's always a good reflection process to use anything that doesn't go your way to think about, how else can you expand? What else do you need to learn? How else can you broaden your perspective? Or who else do you need to better connect with or better influence with? And the perfect scenario would be if a promotion doesn't go to your way. There's some of the questions that you can ask yourself. Now, whilst it might seem super basic and super common sense, often when we're in the moment, we can forget about these things. But another basic truth is inner resistance won't move our pay forward. And essentially, if we expand ourselves enough, then eventually the external rewards will catch up. And the great news here is that whilst external growth can move up or down at any point, and we've seen that, internal growth stays with us forever. So it's my view that from a business perspective, that really the leadership's role is to create a vision, to have the right capabilities and a healthy environment that's set up, and that ultimately that's being lived. But ultimately things such as inspiration, internal purpose, development, connection, etc., will always start with the individual. So lesson one is to break down your purpose, and ultimately that starts with responsibility, and ultimately the internal purpose or those internal drivers sit with you. Lesson number two is strengths mixed with service will unlock your success. So for me, I remember back in the day, many, many years ago, I did a role in commercial. I stepped out of HR, I went into a buying role. I remember after the high of onboarding, I quickly worked out that there were many aspects of the role that I wasn't that good at. And my energy very quickly faded. But staying with that experience, grinding to deliver results, meant that when new opportunity come about, it really did as a shining light. And I moved to a role in industrial relations, and this was partnering with unions in Australia. And whilst it may seem surprising, despite given the role in industrial relations, actually, I found strengths that lit me up. And I now look to use those strengths over and over again. That's good for me. It's good for those around me. And as a reformed self-critic, so many years ago, I certainly put myself in that bucket. I learned that getting clear on your gaps, where you need to improve, your development opportunities, is absolutely important. It's necessary for your own self-awareness. But reflecting on what you're really, really good at, and then the second step, thinking how you can use that to solve somebody else's problems or contribute value, that will ultimately accelerate your success. So I think that it's always good practice is to pause and remind yourself of what those strengths are. And that relies on you asking yourself some questions. And it's a perfect time given what we've just come out the other side of in terms of lockdown and so on. So it's worth reminding yourself regularly what lights you up. What are you good at? What do others tell you you're good at? What are you particularly proud of in terms of your history within the workplace? And then essentially what sets you on fire, really what's giving you energy. And that may change over time. So it's worthwhile doing that regularly. And whatever comes to you, it doesn't need to be anything too profound. It could be as simple as you're great at giving people advice, and others tell you that whenever you give advice, actually it's perfect, because chances are if you ask the why to get underneath that, you'll be a great listener, you'll be a great communicator. And whilst we go through another digital revolution, they're the type of gifts that actually cannot be replaced by technology. So it's a super worthwhile exercise. My mind, focusing on your strengths really becomes the fast lane to better engagement. And I read a study in Scientific America some time ago where participants were asked to explore, uncover their strengths, and then had a very simple task of applying them one day every week. And every one of those participants showed signs of elevated happiness, and that was sustained for some time. So if you do nothing else with this talk that I give you tonight, really is to have some reflection in terms of what your strengths are. Second step to that is, how can you use that in order to serve someone else, solve a problem, or contribute value? Try and do that one day for every week, or every day for 1 week, and ultimately see what happens. So second lesson, strengths mixed with service will accelerate your success. Now, the third lesson I wanted to share with you tonight, the third and final lesson, is to grow through tough times, you too will need to be tough. So the best way to observe someone's substance rather than just their style is through their response to pressure when things aren't going well. And this is a well-known method used by the military, and it's a method that industry uses in order to assess talent. And as society moves towards using policy to protect all people from all nasty things, we're at risk of being unable to deal with adversity besides, a post on social media venting about it. So how does one really develop toughness? Well, for me, this one's a little bit of a deep example, but let me go there. But for me, I had some deep learnings very early on in high school days. I remember being in silly schoolyard confrontations. I'll just say it's schoolyard fights, right? And there were many times where I wanted to do something, I wouldn't know what to do, and I just wouldn't do anything. And I remember watching on as one of my best mates got hurt one day. Now, he was okay, but I remember feeling like a coward. Why I share that is it was a pivotal moment for me. Perhaps sounds a little bit worse than what it was. Everything was fine. But it was a pivotal moment for me because actually feeling that way forced me to find a pathway to martial arts. And I dedicated myself to years to karate, to kickboxing, to Thai boxing. And through that, I learned the process of conditioning, knowing that each time I was hurt, damaged, set back, it was an opportunity to become tougher. And doing that over and over and over again, that's effectively how you build conditioning, knowing that it takes a setback in order to get stronger. And as I reflected again on this talk tonight in my professional career, that's absolutely true. And it's exactly the same. And that's the roles or the projects or the times where I've struggled, where I've had setbacks, or whether I've been confused, whilst it threw me at the time and it puzzled me and I probably had sleepless nights, they were all the moments where I was in uncharted territory and there was actually a new lesson for me to learn. So what I would say is, again, it's another basic truth, and you will have heard this lots in motivational talks and so on, but it's true in the workplace as well, that the moments where you're confused, you're uncomfortable, you're set back, they are opportunities to learn something new, and they're in front of you to show you that you're there to learn something new. Because ultimately, if you feel comfortable, if you're never confused, it means that actually you're doing the same thing that you've already done. So whilst we yearn for comfort, it's really only our struggles that can make us grow strong. So to round this lesson out, what does that mean for all of us? Well, understand and accept that at times your roles will be hard, they will be messy, They may even be boring, but if you look to move forward rather than commentating the problems, then ultimately that shifts the ownership to you, and it means that you can do something about it. And I always believe that a poor solution is always better than a complaint. And ultimately, if you're ever blaming your employer or your business for your unhappiness, then you have a mirror to hold up, because ultimately we're all responsible for our unhappiness. And if we hold the mirror up, there'll be something there for us as well. Because the workplace is not perfect. And unless we can shift, unless we can expand through those difficult times, just like we can in the rest of our lives, then it means that we are potentially leaving some of our potential on the table. And it means that we're also leaving our engagement on the table as well. So the challenge here is, whenever you deal with an inevitable challenge in the workplace or a problem in the workplace, co-worker, one of those external scenarios where something doesn't go your way, is before you allocate blame to anyone, anything, IT system, a colleague, a customer, is to take ownership for it yourself and just see what lies within that. And then try and just take one step towards solving it, because that will shift your mindset, it will shift your engagement, and that's really what expands you. Doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but that's a process that means that you're constantly expanding your development. So to round all of that out, why will all of those 3 lessons be worth it? Well, if you get clear and take responsibility for your purpose, that means that you're breaking down the internal side and then separating the external side. And if you focus on those internal motivators, eventually the external side will take care of themselves. You may need some patience along the way. If you use your strengths for service, that means you're giving your best self to others. And if you were tough along the way, then it means that you can continually show up and you continually get better along the way. So it's not easy. We all get lost. We all get disengaged sometimes. But if you do remember your purpose, if you use your strengths for service and you're tough when you need to be, then you'll always be engaged, well, perhaps most of the time. And to round that out, what I would say is my final universal truth is that we're all really responsible for our own happiness, and that starts with ownership. So that concludes what I wanted to share tonight. I believe if I haven't shot the timeline too far, perhaps I have, Ryan.
No, you're good.
I got going there, didn't I? We can either park questions until out the other side of Ryan Ashton's talk, or happy to take some now, whatever suits you, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm thinking a good strategy. So if people have a question, they raise their hand and Ryan will unmute them. We do have a couple questions we'll answer as a panel at the tail end, and that we've had an email sent through. So anyone that has a question, raise your hand. But in the interim, I've got a question for you, Grant.
Sure, my friend.
And also Ryan does, by the look of it. So the idea, I understand the toughening up and the responsibility. It's quite liberating to feel as though you're in control of what good things happen to you and what bad things happen to you. I'm just curious on the toughening up side of things. Do you feel that a gateway to that is expressing vulnerability with little wins? Or do you mean toughening up in terms of dissociating and not immersing so much into that pain? What would be your version of toughening up?
My version of toughening up would be, one is acceptance that sometimes things, so if we talk purely in the workplace, is sometimes the external side will not always go our way, or it may disappoint us, or again, we may feel set back by it. So therefore, what's step one within that is generally what makes us disengaged is resistance to it. So we hold it within, we feel, it's almost a so if I use promotion as an example, we don't get a promotion. What gets me stuck in that is if I go, man, I deserve that thing. That should have been mine. The person that got it was incompetent. That really annoys me. And if we harbor that and if we stay there, then ultimately that's really where the spiral begins. So in terms of toughness as the way I suggest it, one is trying to move yourself to a point of acceptance around letting go of the control element around what's happened. So one is, if we accept it, it dissipates some of that internal resistance. So therefore, once you've dissipated a bit of that internal resistance, you can then get to working on yourself. So therefore, if I did miss out on that opportunity, I've got a choice. So if I'm if I'm that aggrieved by it and it hasn't unlocked the pathway that I want, I can think about other employment. Or if I actually want to stay here and that opportunity is gone, I then need to get working on myself. And get working on myself means that I need to improve my development. I may need to improve my connections, etc. So therefore, the toughening up element is around acceptance. And then when you start to act on that by working on yourself, that's what builds your conditioning. So that's effectively how I'm talking about the toughness element.
Okay, cool. And Ryan, I believe you had a question, and I'll keep an eye out if anyone raises their hand. We'll have one more question after Ryan. Yeah, I'd love to hear.
No, I was just showing people raise this hand rather than the hand.
So
I think I was Shri.
Shri and Shiv have got questions.
Okay, I've just unmuted Shiv.
Hey, so I noticed how you said like a lot of engagement can lie in personal responsibility and aligning your internal goals with what you're doing.
Yeah.
But is there a point where let's say you realize that maybe you may not be the right fit for the organization, or as an HR manager, like the person isn't a right fit for the organization. So are there any signs of that? Like any signs that you should quit or the person should quit?
Yeah, there's many angles that we could take on that question. In terms of the areas of alignment that you would generally look for to see whether it's a good fit between employer, employee, one is if a business is there to make money, is that performance metrics are a clear indicator. So that they really should be your clear guide in terms of whether the person has the capability in order to do that role or not. So, they're your ultimate objective guide in terms of fit. On the internal side, some of the questions, if I now put myself in an employee's shoes who may go, oh, am I the right fit for this role if my internal purpose isn't quite lining up? Before then, just a binary, I need to leave or I need to look elsewhere. Some of the things that can help insulate that are, one is, do you have good connections within the business? So are you at least able to foster a bit of camaraderie and respect with others in the business? That's step one. If that's not there, that's a problem. Two is, are you able to apply your strengths or your gifts in the role? At least feel like you've got some flow throughout the day. And why I say that is because, if you're doing a role where actually you don't feel good at it, it's a grind all day, every day, and ultimately that will show in your results, that's another clear indicator that the fit isn't right. And again, it's maybe time to explore something else. And then thirdly, whilst an employee may not align intrinsically with the purpose of the organization, do you fit the culture, the vibe of the business? What I say with that is there alignment in terms of the values and ethics that play out in the business? And if those two don't marry up, so say for instance, if you've got high ethics and around honesty and loyalty within the business, but you don't see that playing out on a day-to-day practice, again, that's another cue that things are fully out of alignment. So there's some of the other things outside of what I spoke about that, would be clear indicators that if they're off track, then I think it's an issue.
All right, fair.
Cool.
And Cherie, did you have a question as well? No.
I was going to say, do you mind if we hold that question to the end? We have run over a little bit of time, and my wife isn't well, so
Yeah,
maybe
some
of the questions I can duck off at the end, and you can carry on.
I'll drop my details in the chat box, guys. So if you do have any other questions, happy to contact me if we run out of time.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, and I don't think Cherie had a question anyway, so worked out well. And so just to introduce Ryan, for those of you that haven't been on LinkedIn, you may not know him. Those that's been on LinkedIn, you've probably heard of him or seen his posts. He seems to be killing in that field. And he's been doing it 13 years and running social networking events, and also raised millions of dollars, or generated millions of dollars in his chosen competency, 4 businesses, 1 still existing. And really just about helping blue chip, also students, just really people trying to find their way in business and in life. And really just a good all around bloke from what I can gather. So I'd be curious to hear your insights. I imagine it'll be colloquial and entertaining.
Mate, thank you very much for that intro. More than I possibly deserve, but let me just stick on. I've got to. I got myself on a spot. That's right. So, yeah, I'm Ryan the Lion. It's my childhood nickname, no surprising, and it's because I have got a really loud voice. If you're on one side of the stadium and I'm on the other, you'll hear me, and that's no lie. I've actually been called from the other side of Eden Park and been told to shut up. I try to get rid of it, as you do when you're growing up and becoming a teenager and you want to get rid of that. But it came back to life, and people just kept calling it to me. Hang on, I'm just gonna. Yeah, okay. So where is? Hang on, if I mute. There we go. Ryan's muted. Okay, I can't spotlight myself, which would save any other noises. But so anyway, I got called Ryan the Lion by people because they heard about it being my nickname, and it stuck. So then I put it on LinkedIn, and it's become one of the most, smart moves in terms of personal branding I've ever done. You don't need to use a nickname, but it is part of my business, A Few Quiet Yarns, which is all about meeting the person, not the suit. So in Grant's space, they've talked for many years about bringing the full self to work. And back when I was a 19-year-old, had my first job, and my boss was a bit of an arsehole. I come home and asked Dad, or told Dad about it, and he said, look, son, there'll be a dragon wherever you go. So better the devil you know than the devil you don't. But don't tell people your personal life at work. You just go to work. They're not your mates. I was like, well, that's shit. You work most of your work in life. Why can't you get on with people and expect a better life out of your workmates than that? So that's just how it is. So back in those days, you didn't hear you do laundry. Whereas now, we bring our full self to work, and Ryan the Lion is just like in your sports club with your mates. You have a nickname. It's me bringing my full self to what I do. And it flows through everything I do. So when we look at LinkedIn, I've been using it for 13 years, as the other Ryan mentioned, and I have learned everything by every imaginable mistake you can make, and every imaginable accident you can have, which has been the benefit, I guess. My background is sales and marketing. So communications has been a big part of it. I used to run bars around the world, including VIP hospitality. So back when I was young and had a little bit more hair, I used to, rely on the gift of the gab. Hence my empathetic communication skills, especially when you're dealing with people who are excessively drunk or excessively off their face with drugs, and sometimes, if not usually, excessively dangerous, because organised crime was a big part of every VIP room in London back in the day. You had to work out how to communicate in a way that got them to do what you were trying to get them to do, no matter how drunk, wasted, or scary they were, without getting yourself into trouble. So you'll see when we go through here, I'll show you some things that I do, show you some of the examples, and these will be those empathetic communication skills. But what I'll do is I'll share the screen. We'll start with a bit of PowerPoint. Won't kill you, surely, but it's a good way to keep a bit of structure for me, because otherwise I go off into many varied stories. Look at those two handsome devils. So for those of you who saw this, you'll remember it from LinkedIn. That's the title page, and we're going to look at leveraging LinkedIn with Ryan the Lion. I love it. So yeah, that's me. We've heard about me, so we'll skip over that. LinkedIn, personal branding, content creation, what other names do we get? They're all using the same mechanics of the social media platforms. So my definition is it's the use of social media by an individual, that's me or you, to attract an audience, whether you are selling, leading, HR, financial planning, through building a profile as a trusted go-to expert in your specific area of expertise. And this is also social media influencer who's promoting a Rolex watch. You know, you have to be good at doing what you're doing. You have to have a following for some reason. And that's achieved by sharing your content, but also engaging with others. So if you think of you you sharing your content, that enables people to come in and comment, so they're engaging with you. But when you engage with others and you're going out and commenting, that's your outreach. That's how you go out to different parts of the, we'll call it the concert, or you can think of it as a large event or a meeting room. And you go out and engage and have those discussions. I'll show you a picture and image that'll make a little more sense of that. And by doing so, you are connecting with your purpose and aligning with other people who have the same purpose. So for example, when I'm out on LinkedIn talking about rugby, I attract people that are rugby players and talk about rugby. I have a rugby clothing business. So I have former players who endorse it, and I have people who buy it for their rugby passions, but also for their children, etc. When it's technology, the rugby people aren't interested in my technology and vice versa. So the technology people are interested in that content. And therefore I attract them and build that part of my network. And the last bit is adding value in each action. So don't worry about the cliche or the overused jargon, adding value. A very simple example is if someone says great post in a comment, they are not adding value. You can use the like button for that. But if I was to say, that for rugby, we are running an event to generate funds to purchase boots and mouthguard. It's for underprivileged kids, those that wouldn't otherwise get the opportunity to play. And then someone come and wrote and said, yeah, I used to play for Hawke's Bay, and I played one game for the Hawke's Bay with bare feet. So I'm totally in, I'll support this. And that's actually a true story. One of the people who's involved did play for Hawke's Bay under 16s with bare feet because they couldn't afford boots. So that gives you a bit of a rundown of the general concept of LinkedIn use, personal branding, social selling, or content creation. So this relates to the why LinkedIn and that point I made around attracting your people, right? So everyone is in business. So think of LinkedIn as the big concert, right? You've got your sales manager from Duco over there. You've got your CEO of Vodafone, Jason Paris, over there. You've got your marketing manager, Scott Bishop from Z Energy over there. Oh, the marketing manager of Duco is duplicated. He's everywhere. The CIO of Down Anisha Clark. She likes to party. She's a bit of a rocker. HR director of BNZ, Kate Daly. DevOps from Xero, Nikita Derigliv. Chairperson of Sky TV. What have we got there? It's behind the Zoom image, so I can't see. But you've got your future colleagues and your future competitors. And do I have to click another time? There we go. Oops. Damn. Go back one. And there we go. Boom. That's everybody. So everyone's in here. And the thing is that you actually want to attract the people that are aligned to your purpose. So how do you do that? One, you got to have your profile right. I'm not going to go over this in detail because we don't have time, but it's getting your house in order. So if anyone who works in marketing, before you do any outbound campaigns, you're going to have your website right. Same concept. Your profile is your website. So make sure it's in order before any of you are posting or commenting, because as soon as you do, people are going to come back and look at your profile, especially if you have a nickname, Ryan the Lion. Everyone's wondering what the hell's wrong with me. So just quickly, and I won't go over in detail, but the key places are your header image, your profile photo, your headline, your about section, that's your dashboard, and your experience. Okay, so those are the three key areas. There's over 60. We won't go through them all, but and I haven't shared what you actually need to do to fix them or have them right. But I've got to leave something for the mystique, right? So invites and network. Use your manners and personalize the invite. So I'm just going to show you one quick part of this. Most people use their mobile phones and they see that connect button. They go, yeah, I'll press it. No, don't. That sends an invite without personalizing. Hit the more button and you'll get this little menu. Hit personalize invite, and then you can write there and say, hey Martin, you're the chief executive of Sky TV. Could I please have a massive TV in my lounge just to watch rugby? Can you organize that? I didn't really say that, but you obviously put something in there that's meaningful and is empathetic, i.e. connects you to them and them to you. And that's how you get almost 100% acceptance. So comments. This is the outbound stuff. This is the really important bit, right? If you are in an empty room shouting to yourself, who's going to hear you? That's what it would be like if you were posting with no network. And of course, you can build network by going and inviting your mates and all the rest of it, but really to attract your network, you need to be posting. So and commenting. So comments, share your capability, build connection, it's outreach. One quick wee one. If we all know the little bear said, roll over, and they all rolled over and one fell out. So if you like, as soon as someone else likes, you get pushed down the chain and plop, you get in behind here. So if you're on one of the posts that have got 600, you're long gone, you're hidden. Whereas if you make a comment, you sit right here. Look, you can see my face, you can see my name, you can see my headline, you know what I do, and you can see what I think. So it's a great way to be much more visible. And there's a lot more detail, but I won't go into all of it. Again, got to leave something. Oops. So I didn't put the animation on here. Let me just skip out of there for a second. And we'll go, let's go make a pair. And now I'll go back into there. Oh, look, magic, it's gone, but it'll come back in a moment. So good comments attract attention. If we look at that, Anna Bruce and 29 others have liked my comment. There's 6,900 people on this post. And again, just briefly, I won't go through some of the key mechanics. Leave that for if you'd like to talk later. But making a good comment, simply, people will engage with it as they do the post. So that's Ariana Huffington, and I was seen by everybody that saw her post. I'll tell you more another day. Weta Digital. So Weta Digital not only liked my comment, but responded to my comment and have now engaged with people from my comment, helping a student get a job from my AUT training. So you can generate a lot of good behavior. I didn't quite get that finished. I was going to add another picture over here, but that's good enough. It gives you some insight. You should be sitting there going, wow, Ryan helped a student get a job at Weta Digital. That's pretty cool. What could I do? And that's the question you should be asking yourself. What can you achieve? You can achieve almost anything with LinkedIn because you're connecting with people. Right, so posting. This shares your IP and experience and attracts attention. Now, oh, hang on, I'll press the button twice. So this lady here, and again, I'm going to take some of the stuff out. I'm not going to teach you everything for free in this session, but I'll give you some highlight. So this lady, Gail Page, 261 likes, 120 comments. This was her first post after I taught her this form of writing. Previously, she averaged 6 likes, maybe a maximum of 120. But what her opening line does, of the 200 characters, is it creates intrigue. So I'm going to read just the first bit. I normally read through the whole thing and tell you how the brain works and how it affects you. So for this one, I'll just give the first section of it. So, I locked eyes with a man today, and the look in his eyes was something I hope I never see again. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I have to see more. And this is how the psychology of how you write can affect your success. Now it goes through here, and I'll click through those quickly, and I won't go through all of it. But effectively, there's a process that you can go through that can help you write this. I have a spreadsheet, which is a content builder, which helps you start from the highest level through to the detailed level. She had so much work, she didn't write another post for 6 weeks because she was run off her feet. Now, if you're running a business, then that's really good. If you're an employee and you have a responsibility and you generate that much work, that's really good. This is the power of LinkedIn and how I generated millions of dollars of revenue for the companies I work for, like Fairfax Media. And then when set up 4 businesses, one of which I've exited and done quite happily with. So just a quick little part of it. images are really important to your post. So let's talk about the mechanics of taking a photo, because I see so many bad photos on LinkedIn, and people that I'm connected to, I'll actually download the photo, run a few filters, recrop it, and send it back to them and go, that's how your photo could have looked. And yeah, some people tell me to piss off. Some people say thanks and do it, and other people book me to train their team as a result. So as I said, I've got a sales and marketing background. I actually have a creative background. I was an art director first and used to be a photographer as well. So some real simple things are frame up your photo and make sure that there are no silhouettes, no shadows, and no squinting. When we frame up a photo, we don't want the people to be miles away in the size of ants in the final photo. So frame it up around their chest and their head and shoulders. So see that group there, you can see in this photo, they're actually, what it is I have framed it from the left-hand side of that word to the right-hand side of that word, and it's umbrella. You can see over here, one of my old clients. So normally I would actually frame it up. If you can see here, I would frame it up just underneath their chests and around their head and shoulders, because eyes are the most important part of the image for people to stop and engage with. If you know when you're somewhere and you feel like someone's watching you from behind and you spin around and they are, same effect with the eyes in the photos. That's what stops people. So it helps with your engagement. What else we got here? So framing the photo, yeah. So don't cut people off through joints is a simple thing. Cut them off between the joints. And I think, well, that's what I've got there. And lastly, use filters to lighten and brighten a photo for much more visual punch. So if I take a photo in an office space, I will run a sunshine filter and then an auto filter over the top. So the sunshine filter lightens it up, but quite often it'll get too light. So by running the auto filter, it balances it back and makes the colors quite punchy and rich. And then your photos look really hot and people can't help but stop and look at the photo. Then they read the first 200 characters and then they're hooked and you've got their engagement. So learn by doing. That's a simple part of it, I guess. And what I thought I'd do is stop there and come back to you and just say, you know, the simple thing is be out there, be active. And yeah, there's a lot of tips and tricks that I can teach you. I'm not going to share them all in tonight, which I've said about 100 times, sorry, but a bit of a broken record. Just that I know there's so much more, right? But if you learn by doing, then you will get out there. And the key thing is write your own posts, get your posts out there, share your content. It won't be perfect. I've been doing it for 12 years. My first post was actually, this is my first post. I wonder what will happen. I wonder who will engage with it. No one engaged with it. There's a delete button. If you want to delete it, delete it. And get out there and make comments. So if you are commenting on other people's material and adding value, then that gives them the reason and desire to want to connect with you, which builds your network. And there's a whole lot of mechanics around how your network can help your content grow more virally. So the bigger the network, the more engaged, the more aligned, the better the results overall. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a heads up and a taster. I've got one of my star students in class here today, Rosalind Archer. So Rosalind's been making posts quite successfully for a while and has written a post using the full process. And I think the engagement is up to 198 reactions and about 30 comments, which for me, you know, I would be over the moon myself personally, let alone one of my students having done that just recently. So yeah, the success, I guess, can talk for itself. The last thing I'll add, because some people do talk about it, people go, oh, vanity metrics. That's how many likes or reactions you get, right? So the trick is you don't get any real metrics, the sales, unless you have the vanity metrics. Again, if you're standing in an empty room shouting in the corner, there's no one there to engage or to work with you, right? But if you have the vanity metrics going up, it's not about running around going, I got 198 likes. We don't do that. But it is that off the back of those 198 likes, 10, 20, 30 might invite you to connect. You might choose to select 10 of those people because they're aligned to what you do and who you want to speak with. And then 1 or 2 of them might become a business. And if business is a $100,000 deal or something like that, then that's absolutely worth it. So there we go, people. I will call it quits and say, let's open it up to questions for everybody. And thank you very much for your time listening.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just mindful of the limited time that you have, Ryan. Are you open to the questions are okay? We've got time for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually managed to text my wife, who's just through the other room, and say, look, we're running late, and she said, it's okay, just do what you need to do. So, yeah, cool.
Legend, I like it. Well, Alan's got a question for you, Ryan, if you want to unmute him.
Sure. Oh, there he is.
How do I get a copy of your process then for doing posts?
Well, it's kind of how I pay my mortgage, Alan. So that's why I left a lot of it out and left it a bit of it as a teaser. So we can certainly have a discussion, and what I might do is run a public course, but we can certainly have a discussion.
Cool.
We also had questions written in.
Yep.
So we'll better read them out. So we've got the first question, I think was Grant. I think you're going to be the first question, Ryan, and the second question is going to be Grant, if I got that right way around.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Not that we prepared this earlier. It was sent in via email. We have someone here that can confirm that. So we'll start with the first question there for Grant. And then if anyone thinks of any questions for Ryan, I mean, LinkedIn's organic reach is exceptional. If you can make money marketing without it costing anything, you're doing well. So don't waste this opportunity. But anyways, I've got a question for Grant. How can a person, irrespective of the role he or she has, keep himself open to communicate, especially when there is no human connection and every communication is potentially recorded and may be analyzed, like this conversation? This apprehension in itself is a barrier to communicate openly and be motivated to contribute at full potential. So yeah, how can a person, irrespective of the roles they have, communicate when Big Brother's watching, to abbreviate?
Interesting question. Yeah. Feel free to build off this too, Ryan, if you've got any thoughts. So my thoughts are, I mean, like I referenced in my talk, that the workplace has changed so vastly around now virtual and most meetings, you know, presuming that lots of workplaces are still working from home, most meetings are now online. And yes, of course, that means that many of those meetings are recorded with trust and intent that that's for business purposes, right? In terms of taking the learnings from them. So if we're not talking about a sensitive performance discussion or a sensitive conversation to do with one's, you know, employment contract, for instance, then I would say that the first piece is understanding, and again, perhaps just acceptance, that the same boundaries, the same standards of behavior and ethics that would play out in the workforce in day-to-day life or in face-to-face apply online. So in terms of meetings, whether they're recorded or not, the standards of behavior are really the same in person as they are online. So I'd start with that. And what that means, why I say that is, whether a meeting's recorded or not, essentially you've still got the same obligations to be professional, to be respectful in terms of your conduct. That doesn't go away. So that's first piece. How to then deal with the apprehension around that? Because I understand if it does feel like Big Brother, that can put people on, you know, that can heighten nerves. It can heighten, you know, the sensitivity around what it feels like. So therefore, I would say it's basic preparation for the meeting. So make sure that you're clear if you're going into a meeting. You're clear what the purpose is. You're clear what you're going in to discuss. You know your content as best as you can. Now, this isn't always possible, but this is to give yourself the best chance in terms of dissipating some of those nerves. So I'd say preparation. The second, as much as you can, unless you've got unless you've got data or evidence that suggests otherwise, assume positive intent. So just because a meeting is recorded doesn't necessarily mean that's for sinister reasons. Again, that's likely because actually we want to take the learnings out of that meeting later, or we want to take notes, etc., with ease. So, assuming positive intent as much as you possibly can within that meeting forum. And then thirdly, I would say try and, as much as you can, be yourself with listening to other people in the meeting, being courteous in terms of how you have those conversations, basic human principles around how you engage with others and connect with them, understand their agenda and why they're having their meeting. Well, hopefully then, as you build your match fitness with doing virtual meetings, that will hopefully then start to decrease some of that apprehension. So I've done a bit of rambling there, but I would say step one is to understand that professional behavior and respect exist and are really important in a virtual environment as much as they are in the workplace. And then in terms of clues, in terms of getting ready for that, prepare for the meeting as much as you can, be clear on the purpose, be clear on what you're talking to and who's involved. Assume positive intent versus sinister intent, because that will put you in the right frame of mind. Listen, be courteous, engage in the conversation, and try and do your best. Again, it's about conditioning, that the more that you do, the better that you'll get at it as well. So that would be my thoughts.
Cool, thank you. And for all those that wanted to see how badly I frame a picture, my camera's just spazzed out. So you'll see in the back.
That might be better than the nude paintwork that you have.
Oh, it is. Way to address the elephant in the room. It wasn't going to get noticed.
Well, I think everyone noticed it, mate. I think everyone knows. But hey, before you ask the next question, can I just add to that?
Yeah, please do.
So I have 5 guiding principles for LinkedIn. The first one is do online as you would in person. So it's exactly the point that Grant made when he was answering. And if you look behind me here, I'm recording us on this, and you're being recorded on here. So if I was to move that out of the way and you couldn't see it, you wouldn't know. And that would be pretty uncouth, unfair. But most systems have a recording showing that it's being recorded, so you know that a call is being recorded. No one can sneakily record you. But the next problem is that when they're being recorded, oh my goodness, scary. Well, then on the other side of it, I'll say, what the heck are you doing in the job that you're doing if you're scared about having a discussion? And yes, performance reviews can be nerve-wracking, but they shouldn't be scary. If they are scary, there's a bigger problem than the video being recorded. And that means that there's something else. So, if you're not comfortable, if you're into that sort of space and you're not comfortable, then go and see your friendly HR person like Grant and say, I have a performance review with my manager. They're a bit mean and nasty at the moment. I really don't want it to be recorded. What can I do about this? And from a health and safety perspective, I think Grant's got to do something about it. They can't let you feel scared. So you don't ever let yourself be, and this is speaking from an employee point of view, don't ever let yourself be put into a position you don't feel comfortable with. Yeah, I'd add that because I have been in that room before, and I was actually brought to tears by my manager at one point, and those tears were absolute anger. I was raging and I wanted to smash them, to be fair. If it was on a rugby field, I would have, but in a place of work you can't. So it actually made me cry from the anger. And then the smart ass prick turned around and started having a go at me about crying. And so I said, excuse me, I have to go to the toilet. And I left and went out. So yeah, don't ever let yourself be put into that position from the first place when you know it's going to go south, would be my advice. Go and see the likes of Grant and get yourself help. But yeah, I'll stop my rambling now.
Oh, good rambling, mate. Good rambling. Then the final part of this question was, and I think people should really capitalize on either LinkedIn or on the human resources. We've got a few more moments. But prioritizing tasks is another challenge while working remotely due to the constant electronic distractions, which are due to a lack of face-to-face discussions. How can team leaders / managers help to keep the team on track? I'll ask Ryan that one.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but leaders hire team players. they're not babysitters. So you've just got to be responsible growing up. You know, I work with LinkedIn and I suffer the dopamine effect, which is talked about with the social media addiction, but I'm aware of it. So like with email, you know, I got a written warning when I was 19, that might have been 20 actually, when email first came into the workplace, and I was emailing people left, right and center because I'm an extroverted communicator. Growing up with IT, I already had email at home, but when they brought it into work years later, I was just like, yep. And then my boss was like, where's your work? I was like, I've been busy emailing. He's like, that's not your job. So I got a written warning. But yeah, I'd say it's the simple thing is you've got to be a bit of an adult about it. And if you can't, then go and seek some help or advice. But a manager can motivate and inspire you in general, but I don't think they should be there to babysit you, would be my version. I'll say that's from the employee's perspective before Grant gives a more official and correct HR perspective.
Yeah, so my thoughts on this would be, so Ryan, could you just repeat the question for me? So it was around effectively managing work remotely, right? So how do you ensure productivity remains in check? Is that right?
Yeah, basically people like goldfish getting distracted, and how do you keep them locked in?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, a relatively basic answer for me would be it's around managing the what and the how. So I think it's similar to another response that I gave is as a manager, your job will be to check output. So I'd be immediately looking at things such as objectives, metrics, etc., to get a sense around what's on track, what's off track. And then in a virtual environment, what's more important than ever is resetting the how. So your ways of working. How often are you connecting with this staff member? Again, you don't want that to be overbearing just because you've moved it to a virtual environment. But you need to re-establish a rhythm around when you're connecting, how you're doing that. Is it on the phone? Is it via Skype, etc.? Recontracting around the forums that you're operating in terms of behaviours that are expected in that. So whether it's pre-reads, whether it's camera on, camera off, how are you operating when you're on those calls? And then finally, I think in terms of a virtual environment, it's not completely linked to this question, but when you are managing for performance, it's also important not to forget about the connection piece as well. So in a virtual environment, it can feel more transactional. So when you're on calls, it's very easy to get into a 30 minutes. We've got 30 minutes to get through. Let's just talk about only work. But if you're in the office, chances are you'd be checking in on weekends. You'd be getting to learn a bit more about them. You'd be having a laugh. So it's also important, whilst you're checking metrics, you're checking, you're clear in terms of your ways of working. Thirdly, it's around making sure that there's enough personality connection involved as well, because that too will help get more out of the person. So that's what I would say. And there's a bit of an element of trust within there as well. So that's why I start with metrics and objectives, because if somebody's, if I read between the lines in your question, if somebody's watching Netflix all day, then guess what? That will come through in the metrics. So if you've got those objectives right, then really that should be your Bible in terms of how you manage. And then underneath that, it's establishing your rhythm around how you're connecting, how you're doing, etc. So the what and the how is really important in a virtual environment, and actually resetting all of that. So it's a good time now to go, are our metrics right? Are our objectives right? Are our ways of working right? All needs to be reset in this environment. I've got one more question that's come through to me as well, Ryan, directly, if you want me to.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Okay, so I hope I pronounced your name right. So Hansini, when working with staff that are getting paid relatively low, one of the biggest challenges is maintaining motivation and helping them find purpose. Often their reason for working is pay, external, and they have not really reflected on their professional journey. This is what the Maslow's hierarchy of needs say. Until a person's fundamental needs are met, you can't really tap into self-actualization. What is your take on dealing with this? Oh, that's a good question. I'm now like thinking back to year 10 psychology and Maslow's hierarchy.
Can I jump in while you think about it?
I'll give my immediate thoughts and then you can build off it. So my thoughts are, great question. So the piece around the bottom of the pyramid being those physiological safety needs and pay really helping to satisfy that allows people to pay their bills, shelter, etc. So point well noted around that's only one element of the external motivators. And then therefore, if people are focused on that and fixated on that, what can we do about it? Noting that if they're fixated on that, do they really want to push their development, etc.? So yeah, great question. So my piece would be, whilst you may not be able to bring someone up to self-actualization, and not at, I don't claim that I'm at self-actualization. So I think that the next layer up, if I'm right, I hope don't, maybe we shouldn't record this, don't write this down. I think it's around love and connection is the next piece up in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you've got physiological safety. That's what your pay and your basic working conditions are ticking off, despite it being low. And then above that, it's something to do with connection with others. So I would say that's probably the next logical space where you'd be building your environment in order to address that. So starting to go, right, so if we're helping our employees meet their basic needs, and as long as we're providing at least minimum wage, then we do what we can in order to make sure that's equitable. And then next up is around how do we create an environment that's building some camaraderie, some connection, people feel safe to work in that environment. So our ethics and treatment of each other are good. That's where I'll be focusing the time in terms of making sure that that cultural element's good, because that then, if you get that right, then if the theory stands true, people are then able to move up to more into the self-development side. So I would say think one level up from that, and that is something that you can always control despite someone's pay.
And Ryan, you wanted to jump on that, or?
Yeah, thanks. I'll start by repeating the question as I understood it, and that was, someone's on low pay, and that's not great extrinsic value because they're not making millions. How do you motivate them to go that extra mile and keep them on track? So for me, I put it down probably similar to my other answer, is there's an element of personal pride in here and morals and ethics. Now, I don't know, I can't tell you how you were brought up, but I can tell you how I was brought up. And one of the sayings that I grew up with in my family home was, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So I worked for £4.50 an hour as a manager of as a general manager of a pub in Primrose Hill when I was on my OE. And it was next door to Kentish Town, the highest murder rate in the EU. We were a drop-off point and pick-up point. I thought I got out of running big scary clubs with big scary organised crime to go to the suburbs, and discovered that this was like the central part of it. So I was literally, and they changed the law. So the general manager went to jail 4 years, no questions asked, if drugs were found on the premise. And at any given time, there were bags of this big being swapped under tables. So I was sitting there going, £4.50 an hour, and I could go to prison for this. What's the point? And aside from the money that enabled me to live, it was the personal pride of doing a great job, of the self-motivation that this was a step to somewhere else. And sure enough, the guy who made Jamiroquai and a couple of other big name artists, he was one of the regulars who lived up the road because this happened to be Primrose Hill. He turned around and said to me one day, said, "You're too smart to be running this place. You're only on bloody £5 an hour. Do you want a job? I'll hire you." And I said, "Doing what?" And he said, "Probably anything would be better than running a pub, wouldn't it?" I said, "Well, sometimes, but other times I actually really enjoy the people." And that was the other side of it, is that I found joy in my work, not necessarily for the fact that £4.50 pays the bills, but it didn't make me rich. But I loved the engagement of the people. So I think you've got to find something that makes you happy about the job, and B, also have a little bit of personal pride in doing a good job, even in tough conditions, because sometimes you just have to suck it up. We can't all be Richard Branson, right?
Yeah, fair. And just to be conscious of your time, Ryan, we just had
Yep.
one final question, and we'll call it quits on that. But definitely insightful, and I've made a conscious effort to record everything. So hopefully we can get some good snippets and distribute it in a value-giving way, not just throwing it out there and no one sees it. So we'll implement what you say. So Grant, just curious from a LinkedIn perspective, being in HR, how do people make it slick? How do they make it look good for some people that may be looking for a new role?
Yeah, I'll answer this from so I work in a business, in a professional role perspective. So I'll give my perspective for that, but it will obviously need to be tailored depending on the industry that you're seeking. Look, I mean, my very basic cues that I would look for, one is a concise headline. So in LinkedIn, the headline, you can see where some people will load in, similar to what Ryan mentioned, 200 words in there. I would keep that concise in terms of your value proposition, either the industries you've worked in or, you know, what your unique capabilities are or location, etc. So I'd keep that concise and keep it to key headlines. If you're looking for a professional role, it's important that you have a professional photo. So, and in line with the clues that Ryan's suggested tonight, tailor that to the industry that you're seeking. Obviously, if you're looking for a role within the arts industry, it can be a bit more arty. But if you're looking for a professional role, professional photo, I would say in your experience and your background, lots of people load in what feels like a full position description in each of their roles. I would keep it to headlines. So job title, time, duration that you've done it, and then oh, beautiful. Yeah. And then in terms of the other clue that I'll give from an employer perspective is not giving sensitive information within your bio. So and what I mean by that, if you're dealing with numbers from a business perspective, you're dealing with sales accounts, etc., you don't want to put that out to the world, despite perhaps being proud of some of the results that you've landed. And then with things like endorsements, etc., you can get endorsements from your mates, you can get endorsements from that sort of thing, but I would clean them up in terms of making sure that you've got key professional references, again, if you're looking for a professional role. And then no typos, make sure that you've checked it twice, good attention to detail across it. That would be my quick tips from an employer perspective.
Yeah, it's good to come from those two angles. And just to wrap it up, to be mindful of everyone's time, firstly, how would they find you, Grant? And what sort of way would you want to help if you could?
Look, if there were any further questions out of the content tonight, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I'll drop it in the chat again. Strangely, Ryan Ashton will cringe as he hears this. I'm probably better on Instagram than I am on LinkedIn, so I'll put that there as well. But happy to connect on either if you do have any questions. But thanks everyone for your questions and feedback tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for doing it. And Ryan, how do we find, well, you're already way ahead of us, but go on, tell us. You're muted, by the way.
I was just unfolding my arms. So you can see that I have Ryan Ashton. I don't have Ryan the Lion. When the feature came out to personalize your URL, I did it the same very day and have owned Ryan Ashton. I'm connected to, I think, 3 other Ryan Ashtons. The other 2 are in Grant's part of the world, Australia. So, and just to touch on some of the things that Grant talked about, the profile photo, I call it a pro selfie. So eyes looking into the camera. Think of something funny as you look over the camera. So you're just looking over the device, and think of something funny as you just go snap, 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 snap. And as you're laughing, what happens is you get caught with what's a douchey smile. The creases around your mouth and your eyes, and your teeth showing, and your eyes will sparkle, twinkle. And this is a genuine smile. Now, the important reason you do this is we have the conscious and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind goes, oh, that's a lovely smile. The subconscious mind says, that's a douchey smile. And if you were a cave person, you're not going to club me and steal my woolly mammoth. Or if you're a business person in modern day, our subconscious mind says, they're all right to do business with. So simply your first impression from your photo can turn someone off or make them concerned that you're not of good character. And that'll be my last little point. So yeah, send me an invite, personalize it, and that'll give you not only the context, or me the context of what you want to connect for, but also when I accept it, which may not be for 1 week or 2 weeks, or it could be now, then it pops up as a reminder for you of why you connected with me.
Cool, awesome. Well, thanks everyone. And apparently my phone, the camera I was utilizing did die. So we'll just go by the voice. But thank you everyone for coming. We do have another event kicking up on the 22nd of September. One professional keynote speaker talking on how to make the best experience from a customer standpoint. And then we've also got from a organizational standpoint, how to get the different mind maps of way people approach problems to collectively result in a streamlined organization. So I'll send through a link. I've got a podcast we pump out every week on NZ Guide to Financial Freedom, and a free book you can click on too. I don't really talk much, but yeah, I'd love to see you all at the next one, and hopefully I'll get a bit more slicker at the virtual things, or we're allowed to meet each other in person at the next one. So yeah, just click on that link and we'll see you at the next event. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks all. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Thank you so much for organising.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Awesome.
All the Ryans and the crowd.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was really valuable.
Thanks, guys. See you later. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
I'm waving. See you.